Let's talk about Dredge, and welcome to my review after 100%. In this review, I'm going to be going over a few different things within the game, including the story, open world, the different islands, the progression system of the boat, the different types of fish within the game, and some of the more rare ones, the upgrade system, and the abilities within the game. I'm also going to be going over the new DLC that just recently came out. Then I'll finish off with the price of the game and give you my overall thoughts, whether I think this game is worth your time and money, or if you should wait for a sale or just overall ignore it. Well, let's talk about Dredge. The story of Dredge is heavily inspired by Lovecraft and holds a lot of similarities to that category. The game starts off by showing a fisherman who has ventured out into the open ocean and was actually washed ashore into the isles called the Marrows, where he is then greeted by the mayor, who then mentions the player is now indebted to him and needs to pay off his debt. However, you do manage to get a new ship out of this. You will then continue to catch fish until you eventually stumble across the Blackstone Isle, or in some cases, you are asked to go there. Here you will meet the Collector, a strange and mysterious man who tells you about the power within a red book that he possesses. He then tasks you with collecting 5 different relics. You will have to visit 5 different major islands and find these relics. Once you're able to locate all of these relics, you will then have to turn them over to him. After each relic is turned in, he typically will give you a new magical ability that you can use to make your pursuit of the other relics a little bit easier. Now, typically I would talk about the ending of the game and discuss that. However, there are 2 endings to this game, and one of them being the secret ending. I don't really want to ruin that one, so I won't be talking about that one. I think that's something that you need to experience for yourself. However, the regular ending of the game is when you turn over all of the relics and you release an evil into the world. Now, this game does have a pretty good plot twist that I doubt you would see coming until you get further into the game. While exploring the open world of Dredge, a lot of the game is going to be played traversing throughout the world in your boat, so that goes to say that 90% of this open world is completely filled with water. I know that's a given, but in a way it can feel a lot like a copy and paste when it comes to that, but that honestly isn't a problem with how beautiful the open world looks. The way the light reflects off of the water, or how in the dark the moonlight changes the mood of the open waters. But again, the game isn't completely bare, but also there's essentially 5 different islands for you as the player to visit throughout your adventure. That's including the one you start out on, plus the other 4. Which I'll talk about the islands later in this video, but I will say each one of them is unique and has a different style, which just adds to how great the game plays the main story. Dredge also has a few different NPCs throughout the world that you can find on some random little islands, and you can do quests for them. The other nice thing about the open world is the different types of fishing spots, which I'll talk more about later, but the game essentially forces you to explore the world to find all of those different fish, especially if you're a completionist. To build off the last topic of the open world of the game, let's talk about the 5 major islands within the game. So when I refer to each one of these as a major island, I mean the ones that play a role within the story. Now, each one of these islands has its own quests and side quests, resources, and unique dangers. Each one of these different isles will contain a new region. With each of these regions will consist of new types of fish. There's also some overlap with some of the different isles, but let's start with the Marrows, since this is ideally the starting area of the game. The Marrows consist of 3 different islands in a small area that plays a major role when it comes to the main story. Within the Marrows, you will find the Greater Marrows, which is more or less the main hub or port of the game. Now, it consists of the mayor, who starts the main story for you, as well as a fishmonger who you can sell all your fish to, and a shipwright who can help fix up and upgrade your ship. You will be returning to the Greater Marrows quite a bit, so get used to being here. Right across the way, the smaller counterpart is the Little Marrow, where you will most likely be visiting here to see the trader to sell off old trinkets and other odds and ends. There will be some other quests you can accept within Little Marrow, but the last 2 areas of the Marrows is Blackstone Isle, where the Collector lives, and you'll be visiting this area quite a bit throughout the game. And it's also how you will acquire new magical abilities, which we'll talk about later. The last island is Steel Point, which really doesn't have a major part in the story, nor is there really much to it other than you bring a character called the Builder here, who ends up building a house on the island over time if you bring the correct materials. The next island I would like to discuss is Gale Cliffs, which is a mountainous region. Now, before I go further in depth into it, I'm going to be going up through the 5 major isles through the way I played the game. So the main town of the Gale Cliffs is a region called Ingfell. Now, you won't be able to sell any of your stuff here, so right across the way you'll find the Dusty Pontoon, which is a trader that has all the major tools that you will find similar to Greater Marrow. The main story will point you towards the ruins, which when you get here you'll find an item that will continue the main story. Some of the other notable things you'll find in this region is one of the game's monsters called the Serpent that will actually come after you when entering the cliffs of the region. Next up is Stellar Basin, and let me tell you, this is definitely one of my favorite regions in the game, if not my favorite. It's absolutely beautiful, with a whole new design to it, but it holds a very deep and dark secret deep below, with a monster of this region being a giant tentacle monster in a deep pit. Not only this, but the region is stunning at night, since it has bioluminescent coral reefs and jellyfish everywhere. The region consists of the old fortress, which is where you'll find the researcher who will be the main person of this region, also the individual who will be giving you assignment, as well as the abandoned village and a few different shipwrecks around where you can find some things. Next up is Twisted Strand, and I have to say this is my least favorite of the 5 regions. But also, I gotta give it to Dredge, this one fits perfectly with how creepy the game can be. With a foggy environment combined with a giant forest that is littered with wreckage of biplanes all throughout it, and it has some monsters called the Minesuckers around the few corners. This region will have you on the edge of your seat the entire time. Twisted Strand doesn't have much to it other than the rickety pontoon shop, and a campsite area that will have a few quests towards the main story. The last of the 5 regions is Devil's Spine. This one is a very interesting area since it is going to completely change the environment to red. The music changes and there's a few different enemies within this region that can attack your boat. This area is full of different ruins that seem to be more of like an ancient land with some history to it. Within this region you'll find a shop which is called the Charred Pontoon and 2 other spots such as the Ancient Temple and the Ancient Ruins. Past that, there really isn't much else to this region, but it is very aesthetically pleasing. The game's progression system is fairly simple. You're given a boat at the beginning of the game which you will use to catch fish, and you sell those fish to different vendors throughout the world, and you gain currency to then purchase different upgrades for your ship. However, to unlock these different upgrades, you will have to do some dredging. And I know I haven't really talked about the dredging portion of the game, but you essentially use the dredge to pull different materials up that you will use to unlock new upgrades. These items include lumber, metal, cloth, and refined metal. Using these items, as well as research parts, which you can either acquire from dredging or purchasing, you will continue to unlock new items. To progress throughout the game, you will also continue to perform research, which is essentially how you will end up upgrading to new rods, crab pots, engines, and trawl nets. As you progress, these all get better and make your gaming experience a bit better. The more you upgrade your crab pots, the more you can catch and hold in a pot, but also how many days it will last. The better the engine, the quicker your boat can be, so you'll be able to traverse the map in much less time. The more you upgrade your rods means you will be able to catch a bunch of different fish with the same rod instead of having 2 different rods equipped to catch 2 different types of fish. Lastly, the better the trawl net, the more it will catch, and the different types of fish it will be able to pull up. Next up, I'm going to be talking about the fish within the game. I'm going to be going over the base game first, and I'll later talk about what the DLC actually adds. Dredge has a lot of fish within it that you'll be able to find and catch, 128 to be exact, which include 5 different types of fish that you will be able to find, such as coastal, shallow, ocean, abyssal, and hadal. Each of these types of fish will have to be caught with a specific type of rod or net. However, as I talked about in the progression system, as you progress and get better rods, you will be able to catch multiple different types of fish with one rod. On top of the different types of fish, there's also aberrations of each fish. The last topic when it comes to the different type of fish within the game are the 4 different exotic fish. When you initially play the game and meet the traveling merchant for the first time, you will receive a quest which asks you to find the 4 exotic fish. Each one of these are specific to a certain region within the game. One of the last things I want to talk about are the magical abilities you can gain throughout the game while dealing with the collector. There are 4 magical abilities that you will be granted as you progress. The first one is Haste. Haste allows for a temporary speed boost, but in return, it can overheat and cause damage to your ship and your engines. This can be useful in some situations, especially if you find yourself running from one of the many creatures in the game. But just be careful, because it will cause your panic to go up, which can make for a bad day. Next up is Manifest, and this one was my personal favorite and probably the one I use the most. Manifest allows you to teleport back to Blackstone Isle, which is extremely useful, especially when you get further into the game. This just allows you to go back to the manor and turn in the quest after collecting an artifact. It basically just makes your life a little bit easier. Then we have Banish, which wards away almost all monsters, which is really helpful when you start running into more monsters later in the game. I didn't really find myself using Banish until later in the game, and I kind of regretted that. So if you're just starting this game, go ahead and use it from the very beginning. It's very useful, as this can prevent some of the different monsters from catching up to you or damaging your ship. Lastly, there's Atrophy, and at first this skill seemed kind of pointless to me, since all it does is instantly harvest any fishing spots, but in return it causes your panic to go up. However, where the skill really shines is with the high rate of fishing up aberrations. So if you're someone who is going for 100% and you need to catch every fish in the game, this can be super useful at getting those pesky little aberrations that you have left. So a majority of my review I had already made a few months ago when I originally completed the game. I played this game when it originally came out, and I completed it and 100%ed it within a few weeks. But a few weeks ago I noticed that the devs had announced that a new DLC was coming out for the game. So I decided after the DLC came out I would finally release my 100% review. In anticipation, I waited for the Pale Reach DLC to finally arrive. I was a few days late to playing it, but I had purchased it on day 1 because I knew I loved this game from the very beginning and I wanted to get it as soon as possible. Honestly, this game is probably a contender for me for Game of the Year, so I expected nothing less than greatness to come from this DLC. I really wasn't expecting a 10-hour campaign or anything like that, but I did expect maybe 3 to 4 hours long and add some new features. Well, I gotta say, I was seriously disappointed. But don't get me wrong, I really thought adding in a whole snowy area with icebergs and everything was a great idea, but the execution just wasn't there. I actually completed the entire DLC and all 8 of the achievements it adds within an hour and a half. The only new thing that was added was something called the Shipbreaker, which allows you to break ice with your ship. Okay, that's fine. The enemy of the region was a narwhal. Of all things scary that they could possibly choose, they picked a narwhal. And there's nothing wrong with that, it's just not super scary. But I didn't really find myself on the edge of my chair like I did when I originally played the game. And maybe that's due to because I had already completed this game a long time ago, so I already knew what to expect. Don't get me wrong, I think the DLC is still pretty good even for the $5.99 asking price. I would still say it's worth it, since if you probably pick this up now with the DLC, you won't feel like it's so short since you actually play through this zone at the same time as the rest of the game. The actual story for the DLC though was also kind of just okay. I mean, I didn't find myself getting sucked into it like I did the main game when I played it a few months ago. But again, I think maybe if you're playing this simultaneously as the main story, it would feel a lot better. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case for me. I still would recommend picking it up though. In total, there are 48 achievements with the addition of the new DLC Pale Reach. I completed 100% of this game in about 16 hours. There really weren't any achievements I found to be too difficult or a waste of time. A majority of the achievements you will have to go out of your way for, but there are a few that you can complete just while playing the game. I didn't find this game to be too tedious when it came to collecting achievements. Honestly, I found myself still enjoying the game when I was trying to complete them. The retail price of the game on Steam is $24.99 for the base game. And honestly, for this price, I think this game is completely worth it. The game has a ton of different content for you to go and explore, as well as providing hours of fun. It definitely has some replayability to it also. If you are looking to rush the main story, you would be looking at roughly 10 hours. But honestly, with wanting to upgrade your ship and how long it may take to discover some of the exotic fish, you probably will spend more time than that. The game also has 2 different endings, which is probably going to be the only thing I will not spoil about it, because I believe you should experience it for yourself. But the game has been out for a while now, so even if you didn't want to pick it up full price, you probably could find it on sale or a discount somewhere. I also believe the game is a little bit pricier if you are looking for a physical version, but I still think it's worth the price for what the game is worth. Well, there you have it. That's my 100% review of Dredge. Hopefully you were able to find out if you would enjoy this game or not. Thanks for stopping by and checking out my video. Feel free to check out my other 100% reviews or my regular reviews of games I played recently. If you did like the video, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe. Also, if there's any games you would like to see me 100%, leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching.